the conversation, as it has been the case for the last 2 days, Mike has to start with Shedeur Sanders. And
does it have to start with Shedeur Sanders?
So, Debo, I declared that the day 2 winner was Mike Renner because Dylan Gabriel went in the 3rd round, and no one had that except Mike. QB3, I believe, right?
Off the board? I had him my QB3. No,
right.
Yeah, and he ended up, QB5 off the board?
But he was your QB3. So Friday night winner, Mike Renner. Saturday night loser, Mike Renner and Dylan Gabriel, because they drafted Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland with that 5th pick. And Debo made note of this as an Eagles fan. There were some reports that the Browns leapfrogged the Eagles, who were thinking about taking Shedeur Sanders, to take Shedeur Sanders, even though they took Dylan Gabriel 2 rounds prior. We've talked about the idea of 2012, for example, RG3 going in round 1 and then Kirk Cousins going in round 4. And that makes some sense. And you've said this before, Mike, you can never have too many quarterbacks. But this feels like the most Brownsian thing ever in that you're taking quarterbacks 2 rounds apart.
It felt really weird. I mean, just objectively, from passing on him in the 3rd to go with a different quarterback, when, I'm the biggest Dylan Gabriel fan, and just based off of tape, I still preferred Shedeur Sanders. I still thought he has some traits that, you can see growth into a little higher end than Dylan Gabriel. Love Dylan Gabriel, but that one floored me. And then he passed on him once for another quarterback. Then he took him in the 5th, and the cut to the room, and they could not have been less excited. It felt like...
In Cleveland, not in the Sanders house.
In Cleveland, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, Shedeur was very excited to get drafted, and happy he did. But it felt like, that clip of Jeb Bush when he's in the room, he's like, please clap. There was someone at the front of that Browns room being like, please clap.
It could have been Jeb Bush for all we know.
Yeah, right? It was just weird. And not only is it weird, it was the 4th quarterback to a room that, they're probably going to tell Deshaun Watson, just hey, stay at home this year, IR the entire year. So, it's 4 guys. You only can keep 3, and most teams only keep 2. So one of those guys probably ain't making the roster. Joe Flacco's making the roster.
Yep.
I can tell you that. Kenny Pickett, they gave up a 5th for, so the exact same draft capital used on Shedeur. It's just an odd situation. And top 100 picks usually make rosters. So Dylan Gabriel probably has a roster spot.
He has to make the roster. You don't draft a 3rd rounder and cut him.
Top 100 picks don't get cut. It's a rarity that they get cut right away.
So it could be a situation where you have Joe Flacco and 2 rookies in the room, and we'll figure that out as we go through it. But this was probably the weirdest free fall for a player that wasn't in trouble that I can remember.
Yes. 100%. And it was something that, we thought 1st round was realistic. And that was more just I didn't think his tape was necessarily good enough that teams would just, there was only a handful of teams that even wanted 1st round quarterbacks. We said this in 2022 when it was the Kenny Pickett draft. We're is Malik Willis going 1st round?
Yeah.
Is
Des Ridder got some
going
run.
1st round? Is Sam Howell going 1st round? And at the end of the day, I was looking at the quarterback class, and I didn't have any in the top 30 in my draft board. So I'm do you think the NFL is going to? They ended up just having 1, Kenny Pickett. So it could have been like that, but I didn't see this. No one saw this, I don't think.
No, right. Because I was convinced, and I had heard that the Steelers were taking him at 21 if a defensive tackle wasn't there that they liked. They liked Derek Harmon. They took Derek Harmon. And then the Browns made the trade with the Jaguars, had pick 33 and then pick 36. We thought, well, maybe. And then you started to hear that maybe not. And then we circled back to day 3 and they take him. And by my count, 9 quarterbacks went on day 3, which I'm not a draft historian on quarterbacks, but that sounds insanely high.
It was a lot of quarterbacks. And I thought there wasn't bereft of talent in this quarterback class. There was bereft of talent that you could see developing into starters.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys who I thought could be very fringe starters to competent backups in this draft class. And we saw a lot of guys kind of go in that range where you target those sort of quarterbacks. But I do think the conversation around Shedeur Sanders, it's so polarized that not a lot of people are just saying what the case is, that one, his tape wasn't 1st round for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Some people that maybe had him there, but a lot of people didn't see him as 1st round tape. Saw him as a backup sort of grade. If you're not a 1st round quarterback, they see you as more of a backup. And then who wants the headache that is what we literally that ESPN just proved the entire weekend of draft discourse, that he is going to dominate the airwaves wherever he goes, good or bad. You're going to get talked about. Who wants their backup quarterback being a story every single week, leading First Take, leading Sports Center, leading every discussion after a game anytime
You could have gone with
starter.
CBS Sports HQ, but
CBS
sure.
Sports HQ. I like to think that we're a little bit more
I see.
level-headed
Gotcha.
here. Now, I was
Gotcha.
blaming ESPN for this circus, not us. We don't do that, even though we're leading off the show talking. But it's a case where your quarterback has a bad game, and all of a sudden it's like everyone's like, when's Shedeur starting? You don't want those problems as a head coach. And so, fair or not, with his interview process not going well by all accounts, and then that being a piece of the puzzle too. So many teams were just like, I have to work with this guy every day. I have to do this every day for peace of mind. I'm not going to take that chance.
And I think, and we'll find out, and as we go through this together, but it feels like maybe Shedeur got the message. And if it took falling to the 5th round, we'll find out, right? But you made a point as we were doing HQ, and I think it's a good one. If Shedeur had approached the draft process like Dylan Gabriel did, he would have been a top 5 pick.
Yes.
And I don't even think it would.
That's fair.
Yeah, because as you point out, his tape is not 5th round tape. The interview process very well may have been, and that's the proof is in the pudding, as the old saying goes. But we'll see. Well, let me ask you this question. I literally have not asked this, and I don't think you've been asked it. Is Cleveland a good fit for Shedeur Sanders, just assuming there's no one else in the quarterback room? If he shows up in Cleveland, is he a good fit?
Yeah, I think he is.
Yeah.
Dennis Fancy offense, I think he would be. And I think Dylan Gabriel would be too.
We know that.
Both those guys are. So it will be a fun competition to watch. Like it will be, we will talk about it a lot. It isn't going to just end on draft night if you're sick of it, unfortunately. But I will say this, Shedeur Sanders aside, and Cleveland's catching a lot of flack for whatever the heck they did at the quarterback position. And it is weird. It's the first time I've ever seen anything like this. I love their draft. I objectively, to go from 2 to 5 and get a player in Mason Graham, who I think can be a Pro Bowl to all pro caliber defensive tackle. It's not as if you traded away Travis Hunter and you're left with a nobody. Mason Graham is one of the safest picks in this entire draft class, in my opinion.
Did you get that from Pete Prisco?
Yeah, well, Pete said that back in February, and now he's recanting on it. He gave that pick a C+ after. I need to pull up the tweet. Can I pull up
the tweet? If you forward that tweet to Debo, and Debo will put it on the screen. This is
Debo, you got to see this tweet. It's unbelievable.
Prime. It is prime.
He tweeted out in February that, where is it?
He couldn't love Mason Graham more.
He said,
ahead.
I don't care if scouts ping him for short arms, which could happen. Michigan's Mason Graham will be a star. His tape is special. Great hands, plays like a veteran, quick and strong, has a chance to be the best player in this class. And to be the best player in this class.
And to be clear, February 2025.
February 13th. That is after everything besides the combine. Says this. Today, or I guess yesterday, Thursday, Pete Prisco's grade for the Browns, C+. Cleveland has been looking to upgrade inside for a long time. Graham will help that, but I am not sure how dominant he can be because of his size. I like him. I don't love him. I replied to a tweet that Pete had saying that I trust my own evaluations, and I replied with those 2 screenshots just to let Pete know, and I deleted it right afterwards so he gets the notification.
See, Devo, I learned that that's a thing you can do. You can delete a tweet, but it notifies the person that you're making fun of, and no one's the wiser except for the person that you are, in fact, making fun of. So I look forward to talking to Pete about that. If we cut one clip from this, let's make it this one, Debo, and we'll at Pete on that. But it's interesting, before we take a break, let's talk about that Browns draft class, because I gave him a C+, you gave him an A. So go through that for me, Mason Graham, and we'll go through more in terms of the draft classes we liked and didn't like so much, and some of the players we liked and didn't like. But as long as we're talking about the Browns, I'll let Mike keep going on why he liked it.
You got to couch in the fact that they also have one more first rounder on top of this, right?
Huge.
So it's all these guys
right,
and one more first rounder. So Mason Graham, obviously love Mason Graham, 4th on my board. Carson Schlesinger, for me, the slam dunk RB2 in this draft class. I think there's a lot of developmental potential considering what we saw on tape last year.
And also JOK may be not playing.
Yeah, with the concussion last year was bad. What he put on tape last year was his first year as a starter. Linebackers, if you know anything about them, they don't peak in their first year. It is a position similar to quarterback where you need a lot of reps. He hasn't had a lot of reps. His tape was already pretty electric. So him, Quinshon Judkins, and Dylan Sampson, I think, are outstanding backs. I think they're complementary. I think you have one of the best backfields in the NFL from this draft alone. You go from Nick Chubb, who was a one-man wrecking crew, to now a RBBC, and it's one of the best RBBCs in the NFL. I love Harold Fannin as a tight end, too. I didn't love him if he's your inline tight end 1, but he goes to a spot where they have that, and they run a lot of 2 tight end stuff. And he's the perfect second tight end in a role like that, similar to Isaiah Likely in Baltimore. But I think
that's a good call.
Better athlete.
And then Njoku, I think, is going into the final year of his deal, too.
So that gives him some negotiating leverage. And then, your quarterbacks. Yes, you can debate it all you want, But what's better if we were sitting here and they had just taken Shedeur Sanders at 2, I don't think a lot of people bat an eye. But they got not only Shedeur Sanders, didn't have to use the number 2 pick to do it, and they got Dillon Gabriel too. I don't know. You take the chance at the quarterback when you don't have a quarterback. I said they'd throw the kitchen sink at it. I didn't expect.
They took your words
They
literally.
had like one of those farmer sinks, right? That has like the big deep well.
Farm kitchen, yes, kitchen sinks, yeah.
I didn't expect it to be that big of a sink, but they threw one at it.
And by the way, if you're watching the show and you're wondering why the grades don't match up to what Mike's talking about, that's our buddy Mike. Chris Trapasso does the grades in real time during the draft. Mike, that's not. It's neither Mike nor my grades, but you heard what Mike said about it. So he gave Dillon Gabriel C. You can take that up with Traps later. I would imagine you gave that an A+.
I just gave it an A.
An A, okay. The Dillon Gabriel pick in particular, though.
I did a YouTube review on that pick, and I was sweating profusely in the studio because yesterday was like hot. And I was searching for an interview earlier today of Dillon from the combine, and I see myself, and I'm just like glistening wet, and I'm like, how'd they let me do it? But Dillon Gabriel, A pick. There you have it.
I think you were a little nervous to get to meet him in person, and you couldn't.
No, it was the pick grade that I gave from Thursday night.
And by the way, Devo, when we talked to Dillon at the combine, he talked about the white minivan he drove. Mike literally rented a white minivan this week to drive around in recognition and support.
Well, that was for something else.